Welcome to this new Flight Simulator update movie. In this movie we're gonna depart from the airport of Cairns and then look at the Great Barrier Reef and some other points which are close to Cairns, and then finally we're gonna look at the Photogrammetry update which the city of Cairns received. So let's remove the parking brake and let's take off. So the airport itself also received an update, if I'm correctly. So it's not, I would say, a photogrammetry update, but it looks really nice. A lot of details being added here.
Crafters X-ray Golf Sierra continue for north departure.
We're gonna ignore the ATC for now. That's the challenge. Playing it on the Xbox, right? Playing it on the Xbox has several challenges, including, I would say, buttons. Say if you don't have an Xbox joystick, or if you do not have a Flight Simulator joystick for the Xbox, I definitely recommend you to, let's say, connect, for example, a keyboard to it, which makes it easier to do some things. So we're gonna turn to the right side. I'm gonna ignore the ATC, then it will eventually stop. It's not official, well, not the idle way, but hey, let's do that. So there we see the airport behind us, right? So you can see it's a pretty large airport. It's not too busy at the moment. The weather is pretty nice. It's nearly morning, late afternoon. Well, it's late afternoon. So let's have a look at some of the pieces. So we need to fly a bit outside of the coast to figure out where those points of interest are. Right? Normally you would see those points of interest popping up with the white dot. That depends, because you can also switch off that option. But in most cases you will see them, and then you can still use them.
Crafters X-ray Golf Sierra, please acknowledge.
The nice thing about this aircraft is that it also has a, say, glass roof, right? So you can look to it. And a lot of buttons. So to see where you are, right, you can always activate the map, right, the VFR map, if you're lucky, and the VFR map can be found here, right? So if you don't have the VFR map, then you can also use the, say, if you don't have the VFR map, if you have want to see the VFR map but have a keyboard, for example, attached to it, then you might also want to use that keyboard for it, and then you can simply press the letter V, right, from Victor. See that we're deviating from the course a bit, so we need to adjust the course. I did set up, I would say, a trawl path which goes into the direction of the point of interest, so to make it easier for myself. So 18 is now terminated, so that's nice. Of course, you don't need to use the VFR map. That's one thing I forgot to say, but you can also use this display, right? So here you can also see the white line, which was the same one as on the VFR map, which points you into the direction where we want to fly to. If we look outside the aircraft, right, you can see it's really nice weather, nice sunshine. And if we look back down, we would see the airport, and next to the airport there's the city. So that's the other, let's say, part we're gonna visit. In the meantime, we're gonna adjust the course a bit. That's the nice thing about using GPS, right? It's relatively easy between brackets. Need to adjust the course a bit. Also reduce trolling a bit. So if you want to zoom in, right, you can press the, what is it? The LB key and then press the arrow down, then you can zoom in closer. Then you can see, okay, what's the distance? So the distance is 6.5 miles. But that's, I would say, back to the airport or to the city. Because you can see it's increasing, right? So we're flying away from it. This is a view, go even one, I would say, one level lower, right? You can do it by using the by pressing the down key on the on the D-pad. Then you can even look closer, and you can hover around in the cockpit. Would have expected it to be a little bit closer, to be honest. But no problem, right? We're just flying out nicely. So let's go outside. There we are. There we see both of the point of interest, right? The left one is the Great Barrier Reef, right? So that's, I would say, no probably with everybody. It's I'd say most beautiful reef there is around the world. That's only based on stories because I've never been there and I've only seen it on television. Next to it there's another reef, so if you would look back, right, we're already, let's say, flying a few miles outside of the coastline. But let's enjoy this view. Let's go inside again, to avoid that the noise is too heavy. So to make sure that we can hear it clear, or we can see it clearly, we're gonna decrease the altitude because we're flying currently above 6,000 feet. So we're gonna decrease that slowly so that we can have I would say a better look at the point of interest. Of course, we can also go outside, right? So we can simply press the let's say 2 squares, and then we can go outside and have a look. But even then, if you're say lower, then it's even more nicer. The cool thing about those white dots, right, which are by default enabled, but you can disable them, is that it will also show you what it is. Because in some cases, right, if you're local, then you probably know it, but if you're coming from the other side of the world, then you might not know what it is, and that's where you can use those white dots for. Closer and closer in, you can see the level of detail already, right? You can see the sandbanks around it. Of course, with the Great Barrier Reef, the most beautiful thing is below the water, which you can't visit using an aircraft. Well, you can do it, but probably that's not the best idea to do. So decreasing, we're almost at 4,000. And then we're at the green island, Jetty. That's one of the islands which is in front of the coast of Australia. To be, let's say, more exact, it's close to the. It's closer to Cairns, the city of Cairns. It's in front of the coast, and you can see all those. I would say it's a small island, but if you look around it, you can see all the, I would say, sandbanks. You can see all the detail which has been added to this point of interest. So it's really cool to see this one. Can you land on it? Well, probably you can, but probably the best thing to do is to do that with a helicopter, because it looks quite challenging if you want to do it using this airplane, or you must go really slow. Here you can see the detail, right? It's really nicely detailed. In the meantime, we need to keep an eye on our altimeter, right? Because we're going to the 3,000 mark. Look like it's a little bit hard to see, but the question is, okay, can you land on this, or is this, say, is this part which we're currently flying over, is that the only part which we can land on? I would expect that this piece also to be landable around it, but it makes me, I've got some doubts about it. So maybe we should try that in another flight. So below us you can see the island, right? There's a boat attached to it. There's some small buildings close to it. And if we would now continue our turn, then we are going in the direction of the Great Barrier Reef, which is our next visiting point. So we're gonna increase throttling a bit, because we want to stop decreasing the altitude. And on the left side, right, in this view, or on the left side, yeah, you can see the speed, you can see the engine, right, and also the throttle, which is the white arrow, which you can, or the white, say, marker, which you can see. You can see the remaining view, and the AOA, which stands for the angle of attack. So the angle of attack always needs to be green, right? If you're, say, if it comes into the orange or red zone, then you're in the danger zone, because then it could result in that the aircraft simply drop from the air. So keep an eye on that, and then increase the speed if you want. Also, another thing is what you can do is, of course, trim the aircraft a little bit better so that it doesn't increase the altitude. On the left side, or on the right side, you can see the flaps, right? The flaps are now set to neutral. The trim is set to, I would say, almost take off. It's in the green marker, but you probably need to adjust it a bit to make sure that you're, I would say, going into the correct direction. Setting the trim is always a little bit hard, even on the Xbox, or even on the Xbox, if you have got a, let's say, professional controller, but also on the PC, right? I would say in most cases that wheel which you need to use to adjust the trim is, I would say, really sensitive. You probably need to make some changes to it if you want. If we go further to the right, you can see the altitude, right? That's the altitude we're currently flying, and further to the right, or most far to the right, is the VS, which stands for vertical speed. So that's the speed we're traveling upwards or downwards. So in this case, 710 or 700 means we're increasing our altitude with 700 feet per minute. So below us is the Great Barrier Reef, right? You can see a lot of detail, and by seeing this, I do think that the other island we just visited is also only partially, I would say, landable, right? You can't land on it fully. So the Great Barrier Reef is really large, right? You can see it starts already over there, and you can also see some parts over there. So a lot of details here, really cool. So next stop is Cairns City, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back in the aircraft and we're gonna make a turn. As you can see, it's also being displayed on the map, which we have in our Garmin system. So there we go. So it's now a straight course. So we're gonna level out. And just for the fun, we're gonna look again at the Great Barrier Reef, right, which is below us. There. Looks pretty impressive. So now let's go inside the aircraft again, because we need to ensure that we're flying the correct direction. Of course, what we could have done is open a VFR map, right, to have a look at that. That also is an option. In this case, the pink line, that's the active lag of our flight plan. So we're climbing to 5,000 feet almost. So what you could do is, in this case, you can play with the mixture and with the RPMs. The RPMs is here, or the propeller as they call it. To reduce the RPMs, because currently you see that the RPMs are currently in the red zone, which is something you, I would say, probably won't want to have in most scenarios, because it has, I would say, negative impact on the engine. I'm gonna readjust the course a bit, and after that I will readjust the propeller and also the mixture. So it results in both more optimal fuel usage, but also it, I would say, prevents that your engine is being damaged. So you can select it and then use the right pad to decrease. Be careful, because if you're pulling it too far, like I just did, that will completely shut down the engine. So press B to deactivate, then we're going to press A to activate the propeller. Use a D-pad, the joystick, the right joystick, to reduce it, and now you can see that the let's say the RPMs are in green zone. It could be that you need to increase the throttle a bit, or play around a little bit with the propeller and with the mixture to make sure that you're, let's say, stabilizing the altitude you're flying. So be aware of that. So we're still flying, right? We're flying back to the, I would say, mainland. We just visited these 2 points of interest, which are, I would say, now back. So on the left side is the green island Jetty. Nice island in front of the coast of Australia, to be more exact, in front of the city of Cairns. So we departed from the airport of Cairns, which is an international airport. And now we're on our way back to the city of Cairns, because the city of Cairns received a photogrammetry update. So let's have a look at how that looks like. I'm gonna look at how far we are. Right, so this shows the distance is 12.3 miles. That's shown here. This is the bearing we're flying. This is the waypoint we're to, the GS and the track. So we're going good. So the track is the direction we're flying into, right? So if we would want to fly to the waypoint itself, we need to be at 260. We're currently flying to 12 to 11 to 12. Then we will figure out that we will end up at that waypoint. Here we can see the oil pressure and oil temperature. They're both in the green zones. Always keep an eye on it. And keep an eye on the RPMs, right? Like just explained, if they're too long in the red zone, then it's not good for the engine. But currently, say we're doing well. You can also see the altitude and the speedometer, right? And the transponder code is set to 1200, which means no code is assigned to it. Ident normally is displayed if you have the let's say if you have VOR configured on your navigation radios. If it recognizes it, then it will show it there. So we're coming very close, so we're gonna reduce the throttling a bit, right? Because we want to adjust to altitude. And you can see there's a lot of nice scenery around around the city, right? A lot of nature, a lot of mountains. So probably it's I would say it can be a real challenge if you want to land on the airport itself. Although if you're coming from this direction, then there's not so many mountains. Still going into the correct direction. You can see that we're descending our altitude while flying. I would say kind of a pretty stable speed. Always be very careful adjusting it, especially if you're using a let's say flight simulator or Xbox controller, but also if you're using other joysticks. Be careful with adjusting the both the throttle, but also the altitude. And also the one which probably is the most sensitive is the trim one. I'm gonna decrease a little bit further because we want to descend a little bit faster, because there's the city of Cairns already, and that's the one we want to visit, right? We want to see what's being added as part of the photogrammetry stuff. And we're coming closer. We're already, I would say, almost flying parallel to the mountains, which are close to Cairns. So next stop is the city itself. So let's see how Flight Simulator behaves, because what we saw on several fora is that the frames per second was, I would say, really impacted for some reason. Especially on the Xbox. On the PC it works pretty fine, but on the Xbox Series X it's sometimes stuttering like crazy, but you probably also have seen on my previous videos. And we're there almost there. So let's go to the outside view and have a look. So on the right side you can see the airport, which we used to depart from at the start of a flight. On the back you can't see the points anymore, but there was the island and the Great Barrier Reef, and we're now on our way to Cairns City. It looks like that based from this, I would say, angle, that there are some changes on the right side, or sorry, on the left side. So let's have a look there. We're currently descending with roughly 400 feet per minute. So we're now going straight to the, I would say, probably the arrival route. So the star. Maybe even approach to the runway, right? So be careful. You need to be very careful. Probably not. Normally this won't be allowed. So here we are. So we're gonna help the aircraft a bit descending. You can see that they're directly correct, right? So as soon as you let's say release the joystick, it will reduce to normal vertical climbing speed, and we need to keep an eye on the airspeed also. So Cairns, what has changed here? Well, it looks like that the part we're currently, I would say, going to direct to, right? This part looks like to have the most changes, because the rest is really, I would say, kind of flat. Well, if we look at it from this angle, right? This angle, then you can clearly see that there are some changes here, especially close to the coastline. And also to the harbor, so that's interesting. There are not so many points of interest, like compared to other cities, only a few, but those are, I would say, in front of the coastline, not really in the city itself. Here's the harbor, and I think then we've got most changes. There's a building here right on the top of the wing, but other than that, there's not so many changes here. So let's say let's turn around and then let's decrease altitude a little bit further so we can have a closer look at the buildings which have been adjusted. Gonna make a turn. Always keep an eye on your altitude if you're making a turn, because you can see that we're, say, continue to drop more altitude. So adjust the joystick for that, pull back a little bit. It's a nice and small aircraft, this one. That's some nature. So we're gonna drop the altitude a little bit further because we want to have a look at it. So here's some ships. It looks like that one of them looks like almost a naval ship or something, and a large oil tanker. Maybe. And then we here have the city of Cairns, right? We see some industry which we just bypassed, and then we fly to the coastline. Which received several updates, as we can see. Those updates were not there, right? So these are the buildings. Does it look like some hotels or something? There's a swimming pool there. So we're gonna make a turn to the other part. Altitude, because you can see the altitude drops like crazy. Some of the large buildings and hotels, because there are swimming pools in front of it, so I assume those are hotels. So if it's something different, then let me know. If it's your private say private building, then let me go. And some other high buildings here. So those are, I would say, the main changes which are part of the Photogrammetry update. Which also eventually brings us back to the airport, right? So let's try and land on the airport. So let's drop the flaps. You can do that by pressing the D-pad down 1, then 2. And also let's decrease the speed, but not too much. So we're gonna try it, right? I can't guarantee that it goes correctly because it's really hard using the Xbox controller. So that was the 500 mark. Maybe I should go inside the aircraft. Or we approach too high, right? You can see it. So we're going to focus on those 2 white lines. You can see those adjustments which you need to make are really hard with the Xbox controller. A little bit of bumpy landing, but it wasn't too bad, I must say. With the PC, it's not much easier, but it's easier compared to this one. So we're gonna decrease the altitude, or decrease the speed, sorry, throttle. And we landed successfully, right? So we landed successfully on Cairns Airport. So what we did in this Flight Simulator update movie, we looked at 2 of the points which are close to the city. And then eventually we visited the city of Cairns. I can see that it stutters a bit. So we're still decreasing speed. And we can now turn right or left if we want. And clear the runway again for another nice aircraft which can land on this beautiful airport. Because the airport also looks pretty nice, right? So it has received some updates. So that's cool. So I'm gonna go straight on. And here ends our video, right? So we're gonna move the aircraft a little bit further to the parking spot, and then we will stop recording. Again, in this video we looked at both Cairns city, but also at 2 points of interest which are close to the city. Really nice, really like it. So we're taxiing slowly. Let's park it over there. Of course, normally you should request permission to land, right? Almost there. Decrease the speed again. Adjust. And we're there. So here ends this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you've got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.